Friday night. A quiet house. The kind of night I usually enjoyed. Just me, the couch, and some mindless television while I waited for Emily to come home. She was at her company's big corporate event, something she had been looking forward to for weeks. A fancy gathering at a luxury hotel downtown, filled with executives, free drinks, and all the coworkers she spent more time with than she did with me. She had told me I would not enjoy it, and maybe she was right. I was not the kind of guy who thrived at those events, standing around, making small talk with people I did not care about, pretending to laugh at bad jokes, watching her mingle like she was in her element. Still, something about tonight felt different. I had watched her get ready, watched as she stood in front of the mirror, carefully adjusting her dress, adding a little extra perfume. The one she only wore on special occasions, the one I had not smelled on her in months. She had a certain energy about her, excited but almost anxious, rushed but still careful. I had asked if she needed a ride, but she waved me off, saying she would take an Uber. That was not unusual, but the way she paused before leaving, it was quick, barely noticeable, but I caught it, like she was waiting for me to say something, to ask something. I didn't, so she smiled, told me not to wait up, and walked out the door. For a while, I ignored the feeling creeping up my spine, told myself I was overthinking, that I was not some insecure husband who needed to track his wife's every move. She was just at a work event. She was just having fun, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Then, just past midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Thought it was some spam call, but something told me to pick up. The moment I heard the voice, I knew I had made a mistake trusting her. You do not know me, but you should know what your wife is doing right now. The man on the other end sounded drunk. Slurred speech. That slow, deliberate way people talk when they have had too much but still want to be understood. My grip tightened around the phone. Who is this? Does not matter. What matters is where your wife is. She is not in the ballroom anymore. A slow, nasty chuckle. She is in one of the back rooms with Jason. You know, Jason from marketing? Thought you should hear it from someone before she comes home and lies to you. Jason. I knew the name. She had mentioned him before, casually in passing. Some guy from her team. A hard worker. A nice guy. I had never thought much of it. Never had a reason to. Until now. I did not say a word. Did not ask questions. I just listened. You still there, man? The caller slurred. Click. I hung up. I sat there, phone still in my hand, staring at the screen like it could give me answers. My mind was blank for a second, then everything started crashing down at once. I should have been in denial. Should have brushed it off as some drunk idiot messing with me. But I was not an idiot. That feeling I had earlier, it was not paranoia. It was instinct. I knew. I had known from the moment she walked out that door. And now I had confirmation. The anger hit fast. Not just anger, rage. A kind I had not felt in years. My jaw clenched. My breathing slowed. My heart pounded, but my hands? Steady. Cold. Focused. I was not going to sit here like a fool and wait for her to come home with some pathetic excuse. I grabbed my keys and headed for the hotel. I drove like a man with a purpose. Not reckless. Not out of control. Just that focused kind of rage that made every movement precise. The streets blurred past me, neon signs reflecting off the windshield, but all I could see was the image forming in my head. Emily, my wife, in some dimly lit back room with Jason from marketing. The name alone made my stomach twist. Jason. I had barely paid attention to him before. I had seen his name in emails, maybe heard his voice in the background of a call when Emily worked from home. He was just another forgettable co-worker. Until now. Now, his name was burned into my mind. The hotel came into view, a sleek, towering building downtown, the kind that charged 5 times the normal price just for the view. The parking lot was packed, the driveway lined with expensive cars, valet drivers rushing around. I pulled up to the curb and parked illegally. I did not care. If I got a ticket, so be it. I had bigger things to deal with. The moment I stepped inside, the atmosphere hit me. Low music, warm lighting, the murmur of conversations, the scent of expensive alcohol hanging in the air. The main ballroom was straight ahead, past the concierge desk, and a long hallway lined with glass walls. Inside, I saw groups of people laughing, drinks in hand, some swaying slightly as the night caught up with them. I scanned the crowd. She was not there. I moved deeper into the room. The party was still going strong, though it had shifted. Gone was the corporate professionalism. Now it was in the let's pretend we are still respectable while getting trashed phase. A few people glanced at me as I passed, probably wondering if I was supposed to be there. No one stopped me. Then, I saw a familiar face, one of Emily's colleagues. A blonde woman who had been at our house once for a work event. I cannot remember her name. I did not need to. She was tipsy, leaning against a high-top table, mid-conversation with someone when I walked up. Her eyes flicked to me, confusion flashing across her face. "Have you seen Emily?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. She hesitated. "Oh, she was here earlier," she said, her voice slow, like she was trying to remember. "Left with Jason, I think. Probably went to." She stopped. Her eyes widened, realizing who she was talking to. I did not need to say a word. My face said enough. She clamped her mouth shut and looked away. I turned and walked off before she could fumble for an excuse. My hands curled into fists at my sides. That heat, that slow, burning rage was rising up my spine. I took in my surroundings. The hotel was big, but not complicated. The elevators were to the right, leading up to the guest rooms. The signs above the hallways pointed to conference rooms, lounges, and private event spaces. It was not hard to guess where they went. I started toward the hallway. Each step felt heavier, but my mind was sharp. I was not stumbling into this blindly. I was not going to make a scene unless I had to. No, I wanted proof. Cold. Undeniable. Proof. Because when I confronted her, I did not want her to have a single excuse to hide behind. The hallway was dim, quieter than the main ballroom, with doors spaced evenly apart. Most were closed, but a few were slightly open, revealing small conference rooms. Empty, except for abandoned glasses and crumpled napkins left behind by tipsy executives. Then I heard it. A muffled laugh. A voice I knew too well. Emily's. My whole body tensed. The sound came from a closed door near the end of the hall. It was not loud, but it was there. A soft, playful giggle. Too familiar. And then another voice, deeper, relaxed. I did not need to hear the words to know who it was. Jason. I reached for the handle. Locked. Of course. For a second, I just stood there, jaw clenched so tightly I felt the pressure throbbing in my temples. I could kick the door down. I could pound on it until they had no choice but to face me. But no, that was too easy. Instead, I stepped back, scanning the hallway. A few feet away, there was a small alcove, a janitor's closet, the door slightly ajar. I slipped inside, leaving it cracked just enough to watch. And then I waited. I did not have to wait long. After a few minutes, I heard movement inside the room. The rustling of fabric, the muffled shuffle of footsteps. Then the sound of the lock clicking open. The door swung wide, and there they were. Emily stepped out first, her dress slightly wrinkled, her hair not as perfect as when she left the house. She was laughing, her hand resting lightly on Jason's chest. He followed close behind her. Too close. His arm brushed against hers, his tie loose, his shirt untucked just enough to confirm everything. I saw it all, and now they were going to see me. I stepped out of the shadows before they had a chance to react. Emily's laughter was still hanging in the air when her eyes locked onto me. And in that split second, I saw it. Pure, unfiltered shock. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her brain was still catching up, still trying to process why I was standing here. Jason, on the other hand, was slower. He was still grinning, still riding the high of whatever the hell they had been doing, until he followed her gaze. Then, the color drained from his face. For a moment, none of us moved. The only sound was the muffled bass from the ballroom down the hall, distant laughter from people who had no idea that just around the corner, someone's life was about to be shattered. I took a step forward. Slow, deliberate. Emily flinched. She knew. She did not need to ask why I was here. She did not need me to explain. It was written all over my face. "You, what are you doing here?" she finally stammered, her voice too high, too forced. Jason took half a step back, like he was debating whether or not to run. I did not answer her. I just let my eyes drift down, taking in the details. The way her dress was slightly out of place. The way his shirt was just a little too loose, his tie undone. And then I looked her in the eye. No words, just silence. Emily swallowed hard, her hands fidgeting at her sides. She was scrambling, trying to find an excuse, trying to lie her way out of this. This is not, she started, then stopped. She knew she could not say it was not what it looked like. Not when I had just watched them leave a locked room together. Not when she looked like that. But she was desperate. Jason was just helping me with something. She tried again, her voice unsteady. I exhaled slowly, my jaw tight. Helping. That was her excuse? Jason had not said a word. He just stood there, looking like a man who had finally realized how bad he had screwed up. I turned my attention to him. You. My voice was low. Steady. He stiffened. Emily's hand shot out, grabbing my arm. Let's go home, she said quickly. Please, let us talk about this in private. Like hell. I shook her off. My eyes never left Jason. He knew he had to say something, but he had no idea what. Look, man. Do not. I cut him off, stepping closer. He took a step back. Do not say a single word. He shut up immediately. Emily was still floundering. It was nothing, okay, she blurted out. It was not. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. I almost laughed. Nothing. I repeated, my voice calm, edged with something dangerous. She nodded too quickly. Yes, we were just talking. Just. And that was it. I snapped. Then why the hell did someone feel the need to call me and tell me my wife was sneaking off with her coworker in a back room? The words hit like a blade, cutting through whatever pathetic excuse Emily had been scrambling to put together. She froze. Jason's mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to defend himself, but he seemed to think better of it. Emily's face twisted, desperate. Who called you? She demanded. That is, someone is trying to start drama. Someone is trying to ruin us. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Oh, so now it is a conspiracy? I do not know why someone would say that, she insisted, her voice rising, like if she said it loud enough, it would magically become the truth. I swear I was not. I turned to Jason. You hear that? I asked, tilting my head. She was not. He had the nerve to stay silent. Emily grabbed my arm again. Let's just go home and talk, she pleaded. Please, let us just. I jerked away from her grasp. Home, I repeated, my voice cold. You think we still have a home? Her face crumbled. Please, she whispered. I stared at her. The worst part? It was not that she had done this. It was not even that I had caught her. It was the fact that she was standing here, looking me in the eye, and still trying to lie her way out of it. I had come here furious. But now, something else was settling in. Something colder. I was not going to yell. I was not going to cause a scene. I was not going to throw punches, though Jason deserved every bit of it. No, I was going to do something worse. I was going to make sure this night was one she would never forget. I leaned in close, just enough so only she could hear me. You're going to walk back into that ballroom, I said quietly. You're going to smile, act like nothing is wrong. And then you're going to go home alone. Her breath hitched. I pulled back and gave Jason one last look. Then I turned and walked away. And I never looked back. I did not rush. I did not storm off like some fool. And I did not make a scene like I was the one with something to prove. No, I walked with purpose. Every step measured. Because if there was one thing I was not going to do tonight, it was let Emily and Jason see me fall apart. I could feel their eyes on my back. Emily wanted to chase after me. I knew it. I could practically hear the war in her head, the panic setting in, the desperate need to pull me back before I did something she could not control. But she did not move. She knew better. I stepped back into the main ballroom. The scene before me a stark contrast to the mess I had left behind. Laughter rang out. Glasses clinked in celebration. The music pulsed beneath it all. A world where nothing was wrong. Where people were not betraying their spouses behind locked doors. And Emily? She had to step right back into it. I did not need to turn around and know she was still frozen in that hallway. Caught between following me and pretending nothing had happened. I already knew what she would choose. Because Emily was a survivor. She would fix her dress, smooth her hair, and walk back into this ballroom like everything was fine. Because in her mind, she could still fix this. She still had cards to play, lies to spin, ways to manipulate this into something salvageable. She just did not realize yet. She had already lost. I grabbed a drink from the bar without thinking. Whiskey. Neat. The burn hit my throat as I knocked it back, but I barely felt it. The rage was still there, simmering just beneath my skin. But the longer I let it settle, the more something else took its place. Clarity. This was not a mistake. This was not a one-time lapse in judgment. Emily had not tripped and fallen into a locked room with Jason from marketing. No, this was deliberate, planned, and the way she had looked at me in that hallway, scrambling for excuses, she had been willing to lie to my face until the bitter end. That was the part one could not forgive. Not the physical betrayal, not even the thought of her with another man, but the way she had looked me in the eye and still thought she could fool me. I should have gone home. That would have been the smart thing to do. But I was not done yet. I moved toward a group near the center of the ballroom, scanning the faces. I was looking for one in particular. It did not take long to find her. Lisa, Emily's best friend at work. The moment she saw me, her eyebrows shot up in surprise. Hey, I did not think you were coming. I gave her a tight smile. I was not. Plans changed. She frowned slightly. Everything okay? I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough. Did you see where Emily went? Lisa hesitated, just for a second. Then, she forced a casual smile. Oh, I think she stepped out for a minute. Probably needed some air. Air, right? I watched her carefully. Lisa was not stupid. She had seen something, or she at least knew enough to be suspicious. I took another sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch just a little too long. And then I saw it, the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. She knew. She was not going to say it outright. She was not going to throw Emily under the bus. But she was not entirely comfortable lying to my face, either. That told me everything I needed to know. Emily had been sloppy. I let out a small chuckle, shaking my head like I was brushing it off. Corporate parties, huh? I said lightly, always full of surprises. Lisa forced another smile, but it was tighter this time. Yeah, she definitely knew. I let the conversation die there and turned back toward the bar, my mind racing. Emily had not just betrayed me tonight. She had done it right under the noses of people who knew us. People who had seen us together. People who had been to our home. People who had sat across from us at work dinners. Did she really think no one would talk? That no whispers would spread? That this would just disappear if she played innocent enough? No, she had been arrogant, careless, and that meant I was not just walking away from my marriage. I was going to ruin her, not in some dramatic, vengeful way, not with violence or reckless anger. No, I was going to let the truth do the work for me. I was not going to be the fool who got cheated on. She was going to be the woman who threw away everything for some guy in a suit who probably did not even love her. I turned back toward the ballroom entrance, and just as I expected, there she was, Emily. She had finally gathered herself enough to step back into the party, but she was not as put together as she thought she was. Her shoulders were stiff. Her smile was forced. Her eyes scanned the crowd, looking for me. Too late. I had already seen everything I needed to see. I drained the rest of my whiskey and walked right past her without saying a word. Because as far as I was concerned, Emily no longer existed. I did not go home. Not yet. Home was a place where Emily's presence still lingered. Her clothes in the closet, her perfume on the sheets, her name on the bills stacked on the kitchen counter. I was not ready to walk into that. Not while the rage was still fresh. Not while the image of her stepping out of that locked room with Jason was still burned into my brain. So I drove. No destination. No plan. Just the open road. The city lights flashing past me as I let the night sink in. Emily had cheated. Emily had lied. Emily had looked me in the eye and tried to play me for a fool. And now, she was going to wake up tomorrow in a world where I was not her husband anymore. That thought should have made me feel something. Pain, sorrow, regret. But all I felt was a strange kind of clarity. I was not the kind of man who begged. I was not the kind of man who stayed. Emily had made her choice. Now, I was making mine. I pulled into an all-night diner. The kind that smelled like burnt coffee and syrup, where no one asked questions and the waitresses called you Han, even when you looked like hell. I slid into a booth by the window and ordered a black coffee, letting the warmth ground me as I watched the occasional car roll by on the empty street. I did not check my phone. Not at first. I just sat there, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights, the clatter of dishes from the kitchen, the quiet murmur of conversations between truck drivers and night shift workers. It was not until my second cup of coffee that my phone lit up. Emily. I let it ring. Then a second call. Then a third. Then a text. Then another. And another. I picked up the phone, scrolling through the messages, already knowing exactly what they would say. Where are you? Please, just come home. I swear it was not what you think. Can we just talk? I made a mistake, okay? Please, baby, do not do this. I should have felt something, but all I felt was exhaustion. I set the phone down, ignoring the messages, and flagged the waitress for another refill. Emily could sit in that house all night, waiting for me. She could sit there and wonder if I was coming back. Let her feel what it was like to be on the other side. To be uncertain. To be afraid. To have no control over what happened next. I checked the time. Nearly 3 a.m. I had no intention of going back tonight. Instead, I pulled up my banking app, scrolled to our joint accounts, and started making changes. First, I moved everything I could into my personal savings. Then, I transferred out every single cent from the emergency fund. Emily had walked into that hotel tonight thinking she had power. By the time the sun came up, she would realize how little she had left. The divorce papers would come next. And after that, she would be nothing but a memory. By the time the sun started creeping over the horizon, I had already made up my mind. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no screaming match, no last-ditch attempt at salvaging something that was already dead. Emily had made her choice. Now, I was making mine. I left the diner just after sunrise. My coffee barely touched. The plate of eggs I ordered sat cold and untouched in front of me. I had spent the past few hours planning my next steps, running through every possible scenario, every excuse she might try, every desperate plea she might make. And then it hit me. She was not sorry, not for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. That was why she had called me a dozen times. That was why she had sent those frantic messages. That was why she was probably pacing through the house right now, waiting for me to walk through the door so she could throw herself into damage control. Because for Emily, everything was fixable. She thought if she spun the right story, played the right emotions, she could convince me to stay. That was where she was wrong. I pulled into the driveway, shutting off the engine and sitting there for a moment. The house was dark, the curtains still drawn. She had not gone to sleep. I knew that without even checking. She had been waiting up all night, dreading this moment, probably rehearsing whatever lie she had settled on. I stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. My key slid into the lock, the sound louder than usual in the early morning silence. Inside, the house smelled the same, looked the same, like nothing had changed, but everything had. The second I stepped in, I heard movement from the living room. Then, Emily appeared. She looked awful. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess, and she was still wearing the dress from last night, now wrinkled and creased. She had probably sat on the couch, staring at the front door, waiting for me to come home. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice raw, exhausted. I did not answer. I walked right past her, straight to the bedroom. She followed. "We need to talk." I opened the closet, grabbed a suitcase, and threw it onto the bed. Her face went pale. She reached for me, but I stepped back, my hands clenched at my sides. I did not want her touching me. Not now. Not ever again. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking. "Just talk to me." I unzipped the suitcase and started packing. Clothes, shoes, essentials. I did not need much. I was not planning on staying here any longer than I had to. Emily stood there, watching, frozen. "Where are you going?" she finally asked. "Does it matter?" I said flatly, tossing a few more shirts into the bag. "Yes," she snapped, desperation creeping into her voice. "It matters. You are my husband." I let out a short laugh. "Am I?" She flinched like I had slapped her. "That is not fair," she said, her voice shaking. It was not like that. You do not understand." I stopped packing and turned to her. "I do not understand," I repeated, my voice dangerously low. She swallowed hard. "No, you do not. I was drunk. I made a mistake. It was stupid. It was meaningless. I was not thinking." I stared at her, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not the woman I had married. Not the woman I had built a life with. Just another liar. Another coward. "You are not thinking?" I said slowly. Is that really the best excuse you could come up with? Her eyes glistened, and she shook her head. You were not drunk when you left the house. I cut her off. You were not drunk when you spent extra time getting ready. You were not drunk when you stepped into that room and locked the door behind you. Tears spilled over her cheeks. It was not. Do not, I warned. She swallowed her words. I turned back to the suitcase, zipping it up. Please do not do this, she whispered. I grabbed my keys. You did this. She let out a choked sob. You are really leaving? I exhaled slowly. Emily, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I left the second you stepped into that room with him. She broke then, collapsed onto the bed, shoulders shaking, hands covering her face. But I did not feel anything. Not pity, not sorrow, not even satisfaction, just emptiness. I walked to the door, and just as I reached it, she lifted her head, her eyes swollen, her lips trembling. Do you still love me? She asked. I did not even hesitate. No. And then I walked out. I did not look back. Not when she sobbed into her hands. Not when she gasped my name like it might somehow stop me. Not when I closed the bedroom door behind me and walked out into the hallway, suitcase in hand. I had spent years thinking of this house as my home. But now, it was just a building. A place filled with bad memories waiting to happen. The walls, the furniture, the pictures on the shelves. They meant nothing now. They were just remnants of a life that had ended the moment I saw Emily step out of that locked room with Jason. And the worst part? She still thought this was something she could fix. She still thought if she cried hard enough, if she said the right words, if she begged just the right way, I would forget what she had done. That was the part that disgusted me the most. I reached the front door, gripping the handle, when I heard her footsteps behind me. Slower this time. Hesitant. Wait. I could hear the effort it took for her voice to come out steady. She was trying to pull herself together, trying to sound rational. I exhaled, jaw tightening. You do not have to go, she said softly, like she was afraid speaking too loudly would shatter whatever was left between us. We can, her voice wavered. We can figure this out. I can fix this. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You still do not get it, I said, turning just enough to look at her. She flinched at the coldness in my voice. You cannot fix this, I told her, because you do not even understand what you broke. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but I did not care. She had already proven what kind of person she was. Please, she whispered. I let out a slow breath and shook my head. You want me to stay? After what you did? She swallowed hard, her fingers twisting together. I was not thinking, she said again, like if she repeated enough times, it would suddenly become true. I stared at her, silent, letting the weight of her own words settle in. Then, finally I spoke, my voice flat. You know what is funny, Emily? She did not answer. I actually believe that, I said. I believe you were not thinking. Not about me. Not about our marriage. Not about what would happen if I found out. You were not thinking about anything except what you wanted in that moment. Her bottom lip trembled, but she stayed quiet. And now, I continued, now, you're only thinking about yourself again. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. No, she blurted out, stepping forward. That is not true. But it was, and we both knew it. She opened her mouth again, but I was done listening. I turned away and pulled open the door. The early morning air was cool against my skin, fresh in a way that felt like a reset. One step, then another. Then I was outside, suitcase rolling behind me, the door swinging shut. I walked to my car, unlocked it, and tossed the suitcase into the passenger seat. My hands gripped the steering wheel, but I did not start the engine right away. I just sat there, staring straight ahead. Inside that house, Emily was still standing in the doorway, watching me, probably still convincing herself that I was bluffing, that I would cool off, that I would come back. She did not realize. She had already lost me. Not just my presence, not just my trust, but me, the man who had loved her, the man who had once believed in her, the man who had thought they had a future. That man was gone. I started the engine. The soft hum filled the silence. And then, I drove away. I did not check the mirror. I did not wonder what she was doing. She was not my concern anymore. 1 week later, a hotel room, a temporary escape, a bed that was not mine, a view that did not mean anything. The past week had been a blur. conversations with a lawyer, calls from family members who had no idea what had happened, but could sense something was wrong. Messages from Emily, still coming in, still ignored. The legal process was in motion. The accounts had been separated. The house would be dealt with next. Emily had called me dozens of times. The first few messages were desperate, filled with apologies, pleas to come back, to talk, to fix things. Then, they turned to anger, to frustration, to blaming me for throwing everything away over one mistake. One mistake. That was what she called it, as if it had been an accident, as if she had not made the choice to betray me the second she locked that door. I deleted her messages without reading the rest. I did not feel bad. I did not feel anything. And that was how I knew. I was free. One morning, as I was sipping coffee, my phone buzzed with a new text. An unknown number. I frowned, my grip tightening around the cup. I had almost forgotten about her. Ryan's wife. I had no idea who she was. Emily had never mentioned her, and I had never cared enough about Ryan to find out. But now, she had found me. I hesitated. Then, I opened the message. I think we should talk. A slow smile spread across my face. Emily was not the only one who had something to lose.